House had a special guest Thursday. Kanye West made an appearance with the president in the Oval Office. Wearing a Make America Great Again hat, the musician centered the conversation on criminal justice reform.
We have to bring jobs into America because our best export is entertainment and ideas. But when we make everything in China and not in America, then we're cheating on our country. And we're putting people in positions to have to do illegal things to end up in the cheapest factory ever, the prison system.
CBS News Chief White House correspondent Major Garrett has more on their conversation.
He might not have expected to have a crazy mother like Kanye West run up and support, but best believe we are going to make America great.
With that Oval Office obscenity, rap superstar Kanye West described to President Trump the cosmic effect his presidency had on his psyche.
It was something about when I put this hat on, it made me feel like Superman. You made a Superman. That's my favorite superhero.
West and Hall of Fame football player Jim Brown were at the White House to discuss criminal justice reform and other issues with the president. West, a Chicago native, questioned Mr. Trump's support of the police practice known as stop and frisk.
We feel that stop and frisk does not help the relationships in the city.
I'm open-minded. I'm here.
Earlier this year, West's wife and reality TV star Kim Kardashian successfully lobbied the president to commute the sentence of a woman convicted of a federal drug offense. At today's meeting, the president, by turns, appeared perplexed, pleased, and amused.
How does it feel to be in the Oval Office?
Oh, it is good energy in this.
West has left an impression on previous presidents, saying this about George W. Bush after Hurricane Katrina in 2005.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
And after West grabbed a microphone from Taylor Swift at an award ceremony, President Obama was caught on an open mic saying this.
The young lady seems like a perfectly nice person. She's getting her award. What's he doing?
Why would he do that?
He's a jackass.
West said the president was on his, quote, hero's journey, and the rapper appeared delighted to be along for the ride. Meanwhile, the president, possibly for the first time in the Oval Office, appeared speechless, saying at one point, that was quite something. Tanya?
It's quite something indeed. Major Garrett, thank you. Molly Hooper joins me now from Washington. She is a Capitol Hill reporter for The Hill and a CBSN political contributor. Hi, Molly. So,
hello.
What did you think about Kanye's visit? And with the midterms approaching less than a month away, is prison reform going to become a talking point?
I don't know if it necessarily will become a talking point, but I have a feeling there were several senators, Republican senators, who watched that and thought, I wish I could speak like that. So freewheeling, no, but it was freewheeling, and Kanye West did touch on a number of items that, some Republican senators would actually probably agree with, with the idea of, China stealing intelligence, the U.S. Intellectual property. That's a big issue. Prison reform is a big issue among Republicans, namely Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham, and that's one of the reasons that we actually kind of saw a bit of a rift last month or 2 months ago now in the middle of August over Jeff Sessions staying as Attorney General because of Jeff Sessions' appearance that he doesn't want these sentencing and prison reforms that they are pushing.
Well, yes, sticking with this topic, criminal justice reform, the president did say Thursday if his Attorney General doesn't support the initiative, he'll be overruled. Is it significant the president is challenging Jeff Sessions on this point?
Well, it is significant because he didn't challenge Sessions as much as Grassley, Lindsey Graham, and Jared Kushner would have liked back in August when there was some momentum behind prison reform at the time when the House and the Senate would have been able to come back and actually move prison reform, a joint bill, as they did the opioids bill. Now, it looks like with President Trump saying that this could happen in a lame duck session, that is important. And it's something that I believe Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham, like I said, would support and will support.
And Molly, sticking with the midterms, Eric Holder said Wednesday, when they go low, we kick them, parroting that famous quote of Michelle Obama's, when they go low, we go high. This is one instance of the rhetoric Republicans are capitalizing in recent weeks. Let's listen to how the president responded.
After years of being let down by Washington politicians, you now have a champion fighting for you in the White House But I need your help this election day, November 6th, to stop the radical Democrat mob from trying to take it away.
So is painting Democrats as a, quote, radical mob and the protesters as paid off? Is all of this an effective strategy for the GOP?
You know, that's unclear. And if you look back in history, I think that it was Nixon's presidency where you know, Nixon tried to create the same sort of image, and it was a midterm election coming up. And it just didn't work very well. And the one thing that seemed to really unify Republicans during the Kavanaugh hearings was not necessarily the mob per se, but more so that Brett Kavanaugh, this judge, had been, and Christine Ford for that matter, had been mistreated in this whole you know, sexual assault allegation. And that's something that really energized people and made them, for lack of a better word, care and get interested in coming out and voting at the midterm elections. And it wasn't necessarily a mob. I mean, I spoke with Jeff Flake earlier today, or I believe it was yesterday and today. But yesterday he was saying that this is not a mob. What we're seeing is not a mob. And the people have a right to come up to Capitol Hill and to speak to their representatives and their senators. And it's part of the Bill of Rights. I mean, right. Freedom of speech. And it's unfair to characterize people as such. There isn't really a security concern. And if there was, Capitol Police would step in. But truly, you know, this is happening on the left and right. There are quote unquote paid protesters, but what they are is advocacy groups. And again, he made that point that it's also on the right as well as the left.
Right. So what then are Democrats doing to rally their base ahead of Election Day? I mean, some are saying the Kavanaugh controversy is turning into a wash because for all the Democrats that it's motivating just as many Republicans to turn out at the polls.
Well, and that's what we're seeing. I mean, the one thing about the Democrats, and this is a point that Mitch McConnell made, Republicans were very concerned and are very concerned that their base will not get, energized to get out to the polls and actually vote. Those Trump supporters who would vote for Trump today probably and get to the polls for Trump won't necessarily come out for their congressman or their senator. But Democrats, ever since the day after inauguration when we saw the Women's March on the National Mall and in cities across the country, there is just an energy in the Democratic Party where people are actively, they want to get to the polls to vote and to be heard. And Republicans are worried that that's not going to be the same. They won't have the same energy to match it. And so, again, it could be a wash, but Republicans are trying to figure out any way they can to motivate their voters in the next 25 days.
Certainly going to be one of the most closely watched midterms that I can remember. Yes. All right, now, switching gears, I want to ask you about the missing Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. He was a known critic of the Saudi Arabian government, which is an ally, of course, of the United States. Can you talk about the diplomatic steps the president must now decide on, and what are the ramifications we're already seeing as he weighs his options?
Well, here's the thing. So we're talking about those issues that unite Republicans and Democrats, and it seems these days like there aren't very many. Well, this is one of them. Republicans and Democratic senators, keep in mind, the Senate is still in session. The House has gone home to basically campaign. They've done their business, but the Senate is still in session. So Republicans and Democrats are up on Capitol Hill talking to reporters, and they are equally concerned about what happened to this reporter, this journalist. It sounds like basically, I mean, senators have access to intelligence that obviously reporters do not. But when they come out of these, their readings in the secured compartmentalized room, the so-called SCIF, basically they're not shooting down any of the open source reporting that something really grisly and bad happened to this Saudi dissident in Turkey, and that the Saudis are not giving any information. They are not clarifying what happened. And in fact, Todd Young, a Republican from Indiana, told me, in fact, no, they are obscuring things. And if they don't start answering questions, we are going to take actions. And so what happened yesterday on Wednesday, 22 senators signed a letter to the president president basically triggering this Magnitsky Act, and it basically has the administration start an investigation into what happened. This is for individuals who've suffered some kind of human rights abuse or torture at the hands of one of our allies. Mm-hmm. So once this investigation is done, then the president can take sanctions and can impose sanctions on individuals who are found to have been part of this, behind the disappearance and complicit in it, and take those kind of, can impose those sanctions on individuals, bar them visas or bar their entry into the United States, items like that. But on the other, and in addition, the Senate's looking at, how can the U.S. stop basically supplying fuel for Saudi planes that are involved in bombings in Yemen. Capitol Hill, senators up on Capitol Hill were not very happy with the Saudis before this because of the Yemeni civil war and the Saudi role in that. But after this, I mean, you're talking about severe consequences is what I'm hearing from somebody like Bob Corker, who's chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
So the president will not be able to ignore any of this. And Molly, this investigation that's been sparked, is it finite? Does it have a timeline? When will it end?
Well, it has a 120-day timeline. Mm-hmm. So basically, the administration has 120 days to do an investigation, and then from there act. And usually what happens is, again, these individuals who are found to be part of it or complicit, perhaps those 15 individuals from Saudi Arabia, the so-called assassination squad. I mean, such a grisly matter. Those individuals could be sanctioned. There's about 47 individuals as of 2017 or the beginning of 2018 who actually have had sanctions imposed on them through this Magnitsky Act. And so that could be one answer. Again, the United States sells a lot of weapons to Saudi Arabia. President Trump threw cold water on that today. But again, when you see so many Republicans and Democrats united behind, in anger and frustration with the Saudis. It's sort of like what happened with Russia in the beginning of the president's administration, when the Senate and the House both imposed sanctions on Russia, and the president couldn't have vetoed it. Right. And that's the reason why we have a lot of them.
And when the senators work together, look out. All right,
exactly.
Molly Hooper, thank you so much.
Thank you.